on y va. Allez. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you. Welcome to this masterclass. I think it's a Take the Lead series, as you can see it on the screen. Very happy to see you. I haven't seen some of you in quite a while. Mud, we graduated together a few years ago. All the good people from the MBA program, thanks for attending. It was very hard for us to organize this event because of your schedule. You guys have the most complicated schedule I have ever seen. So just in terms of planning, just to let you know, we were, let's say, 10 people, just to make sure we could make sure that you would attend. So it's good to see you. Marc from the EMLYON Alumni Directorate. So Marc is the director of the Alumni Network. Do not hesitate if you need anything in particular to reach out. We have our very good friends from Déclic, the student association, covering this event. And of course, it's a very special guest, someone with whom we do have a special relationship because we did work at Merieux for him or with him for about a year. It was maybe the most challenging job I have ever had, but we learned so much in terms of human resources that we thought it'd be a good way today to share this experience with you. Just a few words before we start. First of all, it happens that I am your MBA representative at the board of alumni from EMLYON Business School. So we have a board composed by Merieux, our president, Marc, our director of the advancement and alumni relations, and we have a board composed by Programme Grande École and MBA students. So every 4 years, there is an election, and what we do is we gather needs from students to make sure that the school addresses them, or at least we take the needs and we put them on the table, okay? Then they say yes or no. It's not entirely our decision, but we do everything we can. So the point is, if you have something to share, please do not hesitate to catch up with me around a drink, if possible, to make this moment nice and enjoyable. Before we start, I'd like to thank Floriane Lambert, of course, who is not here with us. She's in Paris, on our beautiful Paris campus. If you have the chance to visit the Paris campus, please do so. It's fantastic. Not as good as our upcoming Gerland campus, which will be just fantastic, but please do so. And Emeline Chevalier, of course, always here, always present. What would we do without Emeline? And of course, the entire EMLYON alumni team led by Marc. I'd like to salute all our friends that are online. So I know we have about 150, maybe more, participants online from all campuses in Casablanca, in Paris. It's recorded, so our friends from Shanghai will be able to see what we do. So at least one good thing about the pandemic, we managed to run some events online. So just for those who don't know the MBA Club, I know there's a lot of new faces here this evening, so pleasure to meet you all. My name is Quentin. I work at Euronews, as you can see here, so in the green building. We founded this club with Damien, who is the financial director at Visiative in Charbonnières-les-Bains, for those who know. And of course, Maud Moulier, hereby present in the room as well. So we founded this about 4 years ago. We had the chance to welcome quite a few CEOs, quite a few directors, quite a few VPs. This list is non-exhaustive. As you can imagine, I didn't have enough space in the PowerPoint to put all the logos. If you have some ideas, if you have some recommendations, if you have some topics that you'd like us to tackle, please, again, come see me around the drink so we can discuss. I'd like to give the floor to Marc, our Director of Alumni Relations, who has a few words for us, which are related, not the least, to the rankings of our degrees.
Not only. By the way, Quentin, you might be interested to know that the first time I set foot on this stage, You weren't even born, so that was in 1984. I'm very pleased to be here today. As always, when our events combine students and alumni, because this is really an important topic for us to create the link before you leave the school. So important topic. And obviously, Irwin, having worked for Merieux in a previous life, it was actually my first experience after graduating from EMLYON Business School. And I'm also quite passionate about HR topics. So I'm quite excited to meet you. So welcome. So obviously the topic is not just about money and salary, but about the value we deliver individually, collectively, and how we can leverage skills. So eager to listen to you, given especially the context of increased inflation. This could actually be very helpful for many of us in the coming years. A few words about our alumni network. We will be reaching 40,000 graduates anytime in the coming month. So it's quite a milestone. 50% of which are less than 41 years old. So it's a quite young and energetic network. And by the way, MBA graduates represent close to 15% of that number. Not quite, but nearly 15% of that number. So interesting network. We have 200 ambassadors around the world who facilitate our alumni communities. This year, we will create a new category of ambassadors. We'll have what we call promotion ambassadors for every program. Every year, which means you will designate an ambassador for your promotion to represent you and facilitate your group your group for as many years as possible. And this will help create a strong tie among you, between yourselves and with the school. So that's a new thing. Let me also tell you about two agenda items on my plate today. The first thing is a survey by the Financial Times, which is vital for EMLYON Business School and for the value of your diplomas. Financial Times ranking is probably one of the most important ranking in the world, recognized internationally, and 60% of the score is based on a survey that is targeted at you. So you need to be aware of that. Key questions are about salary, even more about salary increase, a key topic today, but also about international mobility and overall satisfaction with the program. So executive MBA survey will start next month. International MBA will take place closer to the summer. Last year, our MBA was ranked 7th in France and 61st globally in the world. I believe we can do better, meaning you can do better. So if you receive an email, especially you, Quentin, because you are exactly at the right year. So Quentin, especially, promotion 2019, look for an email from ft.com or education.ft.com. and take a few minutes to respond. And obviously, don't be shy about your compensation. It's an important topic again. The second topic is about the QR code, which you see right behind me. We have launched a consultation of our alumni network about what kind of jobs will be needed 10 to 20 years from now in our organization. So it's all about the evolution of the world, the transformation of the world, and how we will work in our organizations tomorrow. So if you have a feeling, an opinion, well, please share that using the QR code. If you respond yes to every question, it might take some time, but you can also decide to respond yes to only one of the questions, and it will be quicker. But your opinion is very much valued. So don't hesitate to take a photo of the QR code. I could use the floor for a full hour, but Quentin will never re-invite me again. So let me hand it back to him, and thank you for listening to me.
Oh, Damien? Because we just have a few words to say before we start. Damien?
Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm Damien Duquesne. I'm 33 years old. I did the international MBA 3-4 years ago. Now I'm the finance director of Vijative. We help our clients to make their digital transition. It's around 2,000 million turnover, more than 1,000 people. And I have one confidence. If I got this job, is because and thanks to the MBA Club. And I have to deliver a message for you, all the students here. We have co-founded the club with Quentin. And because we have launched this club, we create our own opportunities to meet companies, clients, and everything. And I think without this opportunity, it was not possible to get this job. So be early makers, be entrepreneurs in your life. It's an advice to be successful. It's not only a motto from EMLYON. I believe in that. And I would like to finish just to say to you, Quentin, special thank you, because it's your initiative. And so maybe if I have a job today, it's thanks to Quentin. So you are not just a friend, you are also the guy who find a job for me.
Well, yeah, but why? Thank you so much. Yeah, he's really nice, right? I love this guy. This guy's the hardest worker I've ever seen. Maybe 5 years at KPMG. He did another audit, cabinet. Then he did his expert comptable thing. I mean, the guy is a machine. If you need a machine, voilà. But we got these jobs, yes, because so we went to Vijative with the MBA Club back in the days to propose something to Monsieur Laurent Fiard, for those who know, and then Laurent took Damien, of course. He's a smart man, very smart man. And we did invite Michael Peters, the CEO of Euronews, who then saw me and he said, "Oh, didn't you apply for a job at Euronews?" I said, yes. He's like, okay, come to my office, Well, anyways, and the story is ahead of us. But okay, we have these jobs. You are in the EMBA program. You are in the IMBA program. Okay, great. But we still need to learn how human resources think if we want to grow in the company, if you want to move in the company, if you want to extend your perimeter, if you want to have a bigger scope. How do you ask for a raise in this world? How do you unlock, I think, the secrets of HR masterminds? And I think that's really the topic of today. And I'd like to invite a participant of the International MBA program, Dries Draicha, to introduce us to the guest today. Thank you, Dries.
Thank you, Quentin. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Marc, for the very detailed, very interesting intro. So my name is Dries. I am an MBA participant here at EMLYON Business School. And I am the coordinator for this year for the MBA Club. And I would love to thank you all for being with us today. And a special thanks for Irwin for accepting our invitation and for taking time to be with us today. Yeah, so just a brief introduction of Irwin and his parcours. Irwin is also an MBA, by the way. He's from Darlamour School of Business. And he started his career at PricewaterhouseCoopers in auditing and financial services before shifting gears to Robert Walters in human resource management. Thanks, Quentin. And before also joining Merieux, where he's now head of Merieux University Development. Yeah, a few words about Merieux for those of you who are not familiar with. Merieux is a major player in the healthcare industry, and is a company with great outreach in the world. Is present in 44 countries and serves more than 160 countries, with revenue of with a multi-billion-dollar revenue, mainly coming from outside of France. And this was during this crisis at the forefront of the COVID crisis. Yeah, and also Merieux is a strong partner of the EMLYON Business School, and we are happy today to further deepen this partnership with this event. For the topic of today, which is, as Quentin mentioned, how HR's minds work and how mainly for asking for a raise and for salary negotiation. I believe that this topic is either of interest to you today or will be in the future. And yeah, just to we have asked some of our MBA classmates of how they would have asked for a salary increase, and these are their testimonies. We'll start with Carla. And
thank you. And Carla, are you in the room? I do not see you. I do not see you.
So, to ask for a raise, I would consider a couple of things. First of all, when is the best moment to ask for it and the person I have in front of me. Then I would do a benchmark of the company regarding the country, regarding the industry, also my position, the expertise and experience I have, and also the value I can bring. Then also I would say I would like to be clear about the limits, what I can compromise and what I cannot. So it's going to be clear for everyone. And at the end of the day, I expect the company being ethical, so that would help to make this negotiation moment smoother and easier for both.
And we have a second word from Niti.
So according to me, whenever I will go and ask for a pay raise to my manager, there are some things that I will keep in mind while doing that. First is I need to be definite and sure about the progress I have made in my career and the growth that I've got to the organization, so that I have something to back my statement for the salary raise. For example, I will keep a record of the good projects or the exceptional work that I have done throughout my in my current position. And the second thing that I will keep in mind is not to be fearful or afraid of asking for a raise, because it is something that the manager will ask the organization. The organization will bear the expenses and not the manager. So I will be really free and open about it.
Thank you, Dries, for the introduction. Thank you very much. So guys, we heard a few words from our dear participants. We presented Irwin, we presented Merieux, we presented the topic. So now, you know what, I'm going to kick it off. Please help me in welcoming Irwin Rouch on stage, please.
Hello, everybody. So in case you're wondering, I'm 3 years older than the first time Mark came here. So I don't need to remember when he came. But that's... So
Hello. Ouais.
Okay. So Irwin, to go further forward in the organization, we have to surround ourselves by good people, important people, but also to understand their mindset. One of the most important people in an organization are HR, and obviously, if you want to have a merit increase, and so where should we start to understand the HR mindset?
Okay, so I tried to put a couple of ideas in a way that would make sense. I will not necessarily cover all the questions that were popped in the video, so we can probably add some additional things. And if I didn't cover it, just say, hey, how about what this person said? What should we do? So where do we start? I like the picture here, you know, the flipping coin, because that's probably the feeling most people have when you ask for raises. Do people like me, or will I get a raise? So keep also in mind that when you are in HR, people will constantly come and ask you for a raise. People or their manager, because it can be two different ways. So the first thing is the work of an HR, not most of his day, but quite frequently, is to analyze the situation and decide whether we should do something about such or such person. So it's a really key thing we ask. So the idea is to walk you through how do we process information and what helps us to decide whether we do make an increase or not. And the second thing, and that's probably something common for anybody, it's always interesting to know what are the objectives of people, and that's not just for HR. So to understand the topic about will I get a salary raise or not, the idea is to know, well, how do we objectivize the people in human resources? There are a variety of indicators, but I guess there are some that are very common. And I wanted to walk you through those objectives because they will help you understand after how HR will think.
So as I understand it, Irwin, this is not a negotiation class, right?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. I thought this was all about negotiation. So as I understand, to understand an HR mind, the first step is to understand the objectives that are given to the HR department.
Yes, or the person, depending on how you put it, but that boils down to the same thing.
And so
eventually.
could you tell us what are those objectives?
Okay, so I did a little game to start for the warm-up. So we'll display the objective, and the idea is to make you guess what the objective is. I hope they are pretty obvious. So that's not an objective per se, it just means that we're talking about objectives. So that's the first objective. Maybe you recognize the signs from something else.
So the question is, do we recognize what this objective can be? I don't know if someone has an idea in the room, can raise their hands to, yes?
That's exactly the idea. We would like to give fancy names in HR and probably in other functions. So we see the time to fill would actually be the objective, to be as short as possible. So that's something very important because I will do a link later in the presentation between those objectives and the way we think. So that's the first objective to keep in mind. HRs in 99% of the companies need to recruit fast. If you don't, then the business is not running. So if people are leaving, you need to recruit fast. Second objective? The one is more obvious.
If someone in the audience has an idea of what this objective can be, please raise your hands.
It's fairness between men and women. So that's not the objective I was thinking of, actually. It was more the balance of the salary mass, actually. Oh, sorry, I said it was the fairness between men and women.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking about the salary mass.
So the salary mass, it could be a shared responsibility with finance. We see that very often, but clearly DHR has an objective that the salary mass will not explode. And it's not by giving a salary raise to everybody that they will achieve that. So that's a key constraint you need to take into consideration.
Which is the third objective after, let's say, being able to make all the recruitments that the strategy is posing for you. Objective number 2, maintain the salary mass. Objective number 3, for those of you who have an idea. Yeah.
To some extent, it could be true. It's a little bit more specific than that. In fact, let's see that HR is a plumber And he's a plumber of talent, so we should avoid talent leaks. And that's clearly something you can use later, if you're a talent.
And the last one, guys, this is the one we know. So
it's good labor relations. And obviously this one, I put it because it's really important for an HR job, but it's probably the less relevant for the topic of today, but it's important to have it in mind.
Irwin, I'm a guy of numbers, but it looks like that finally it's not just numbers or analytical. What kind of objectives, other kind of objectives can have HR?
So I guess like anybody, people have what we call explicit objectives. So they're written probably on a piece of paper and evaluated at the end of the year. And then you have some more informal, intrinsic objectives. And we can go through and maybe display the three at the same time. I'll go through. They're more difficult to guess, I guess. So people like to be praised, and HR, it's exactly the same. So sometimes they can make decisions to be praised. The second thing, it's a possibility, but people who work in HR tend to have chosen this career because they like people and they want to save the world and to make things fair. So depending on the internal values of people, it can be something to easily convince people, or something like you're hitting on their wall because you just want to be fair. And fairness can be either doing the same thing for everybody, so it's more like an equity thing, or fairness means things being relative to what people bring, etc. So that's also something that is important. And the last thing, as an objective, it could be also simply the life and work and life balance. It's just an example. People have internal objectives. So whatever I can say during the presentation, there are things that I can't tell you have that kind of HR. You need to analyze and understand the kind of HR you have. And thanks to that, you will be able to know what are the secret objectives, their internal objectives. And that will be useful later when you try to negotiate with those people.
So if I sum it up on these slides to be able to understand an HR mind, first of all, you guys do have to recruit. This is part of your objectives. You have to make X many recruits per year. Point number 2, you have to maintain the growth of the salary mass within a certain constrained percentage. Thing number 3, do not let go of your talents, hopefully. Objective number 4, keep good relationships across the office. And on the right side of the slide, these are, let's say, more intrinsic objectives to satisfy their manager, to maintain work-life balance, and personal objectives such as RSE or to fight climate change, for example. So as I understand, we have to keep those in mind to be able to understand the part 2 of the presentation.
Absolutely. The idea is just that some of those objectives can work for you and others can work against you. So you need to know basically in which situations you will be.
So I guess before we start diving into this slide, which I'm sure is raising a lot of eyebrows and is raising a lot of questions in the room. I see a lot of questions in the room already. I understand from our preparation with Damien and you that there is a key concept to understand before we move forward.
Absolutely. And I think there's something missing on the slide, actually. So we could probably move it one step further, Daniel or Quentin. Can you move this? Okay. So, yeah, some people might be wondering why Wonder Woman is here. So when you Google an employee, you have only men wearing suits. If you say, I want a woman, and you want a drawing and not actually a picture, that's the representation by Google of a woman. So I'm just showing what Google thinks. So the key concept to understand is that an HR will clearly, hopefully, split the person and the position. And those two concepts, basically, when we have an organization, in theory, you're supposed to think about this organization as a set of chairs, and the chairs they're more or less comfortable. They're more or less complex. They have a perimeter that can vary, number of countries, management, whatever. And then you put people on the chair. And so when we analyze things as an HR, we are going to differentiate the two and try to see on each of those slides, what are the positives and negatives getting to a pay increase. So the idea is to get a little bit more in details on what we look at on those two big aspects.
And Irwin, sorry, but I still do not see the link between a chair and a merit increase.
We're getting there. So I guess the chair, the first very important concept about the chair is the external market. So a position and external market is not something related to a person. So let's take an example. This chair is a position of financial manager of a subsidiary. So when we compare on the market, we're going to compare on similar positions on a similar scope. And the person who's actually on the chair doesn't really matter and is not going to influence whatsoever the raise at this stage, at least. So the external market for an HR has, so sometimes I could be rude with my colleagues in HR, so don't worry. But HRs need to simplify the vision of the world. Otherwise, they're getting too much lost in details. So people can have a vision of their job is very specific, has very specific competencies, but usually the HR will look into some very basic criteria. And the criteria, when they look on the market, will usually be, first of all, is it a support function or is it more a business-related function? And this question is important because indirectly, it will link to the size of the market where you can recruit people. So simple example, a financial director is a support function. Technically, I can take a financial director anywhere as long as he wants to come to the company, obviously, but he doesn't need to be very specific about my products, about the industry. It's always better, it's always more useful, but I can take this person from any industry. So my potential of candidates and therefore my time to fill, that was one of the objectives, is going to be different if it's a support function or if it's a business function. So I say business, but by extension, if I'm working in R&D, I can be very specific on products and I cannot work on any kind of products, so that would typically be a very specific job. So indirectly, this means that your value on the market from an HR perspective will be higher if you're industry specific. There are other things to look at on the external market, which are more linked to the company. But typically, if the company is located in a very big city where there is a lot of potential employees, or if your company is located in the middle of nowhere, clearly it's going to be much more difficult to recruit if you're in the middle of nowhere. So that's also something that can influence indirectly the way he will weigh the job. So that's just one parameter that he's looking at, for example.
So one important thing is to be able to evaluate the position level. But can you tell us how we can evaluate the position level?
Okay, so that's the second key notion to understand about the position. It's probably more common in structured companies. Some smaller companies might not actually have a formal grading position system, but still people in HR, even though it's not formal, will make this sort of way of evaluating the position. So for those who are not familiar, usually in companies of a certain size, there are some levels. And those levels are important because they will define the weight of the job. And when we talk about weight, indirectly, we're talking about salary at the end, and we'll see how we'll get there. So what is important is that depending on the job you are or the position you're taking, if you do an internal move, the job will have a different weight. And there are a certain number of parameters, there are different methodologies that exist, but all usually have the same kind of criteria. So the first criteria you see is actually the scope. And the scope is expressed in a mix of turnover and number of people of the parameter you're working on. So if you're doing business, it's very easy. If you're a sales manager of a region, then your scope will be the region. You will take the turnover of the region. You will take the number of people that are actually working on this region. And that will give a score. And that's on parameter 1. So if you're working on a support function, it's just the same thing. So if you're HR of the region, your parameter of reference will be the same parameter. So all the people working on the same parameter have the same score, basically. The second thing is the impact that people will have on that parameter. And we get into more blurry notions because the impact can be very subjective, let's be honest. But usually the methodologies say that if you have a strategic long-term impact, and that's only one person per parameter, you get the maximum score. If you have more an operational one-year planning view, you're more into the second score, and though if you're more into an execution, you have lower score, etc. So that's the second parameter. The third parameter is anything linked to people or project management. Usually the systems have found some sort of equivalent. So typically, if you're a manager, then you will have a certain number of points. If you're a manager of manager, you have more points. If you have hierarchical and transversal management, then the transversal will be half a point. And if you have project management, it will be half a point as well. So you can mix all that together to give you a score, and that will also influence how your job will weight. Another parameter that we usually use is communication. Could be weird, but communication is also has a link with negotiation indirectly. So typically, if you only communicate internally to the company, you will have less points than if you communicate mainly outside the company. And if your communication is convergent, so you work with people to achieve the same goal, it will be less points than if you work with people and you have different goals. So you are a divergent communicator, basically negotiating. So that's another factor that will influence the points. Have I forgotten any points at this stage? Geography, absolutely. The last part is the scope of your job in terms of geography. So if you're on a national level, you have less points than if you're on multinational, or if you are on a regional, or if you are global. So when you put all those parameters and scores, it will actually give you an overall score, and it will give you the overall weight of your position. So indirectly, and at this point, we didn't get personal at all. So it's only a matter of the job. So when you take a new job, your question is does it make sense in terms of career? And it's not necessarily linked to the hierarchical position of the job. I mean, all the top executives have assistants, and they are not the almost best paid people in the company. So don't only look at actually where the position is located in the hierarchy. Look and try to understand and to get this information. Sometimes companies display it easily, others don't. So it depends on the company's culture. And you will get the position, and you will understand. You can also ask what are the criteria, and is it actually a higher position than the one I have, obviously. Okay, so Quentin likes what I'm saying. That's pretty much a good news at this stage, I guess.
Irwin, I have just one question. Does the context of the organization, the company, is important? I mean, for a position, do you think differently? Do you have a different mindset or a different way to evaluate the position? If, for example, it's a company which is going bad, or a company with a growth, and different contexts. Is the context important for you?
It has a relatively low influence. But I can take a very simple example. If the company is growing, for example, maybe you need someone who has a lot of experience and who masters what is actually the future or expected perimeter of the company. So you remember the criteria, I mentioned that the scope, meaning the turnover, number of people, was something that was weighting on the position. A company can voluntarily actually say, I will need somebody that is way over capped for the position, because I need to have someone who knows the story and who will actually make the position be here in 3 years. So I can voluntarily overweight the position versus what it is today because I'm anticipating growth. On the opposite, if the company is reducing its turnover or managing some people reduction, it could have an influence, but it's very relative, because usually you don't reduce people's salary based on if the company is not doing good. Either you keep them or you don't, but it's more rare that you manage it this way. What you have to know is that when you weight the positions, the companies participate to that kind of system will provide what we call salary surveys. So basically they will map the positions to salaries internally, and they will provide this to an external company. And this external company will be able to provide an average salary per position, and regardless of the position, if they're in finance, HR, business, they can compare them based only on the weight. So all the positions become neutral, basically. And those companies will actually also update the brackets of turnover and number of people over time, because basically the world so far was more in terms of growth. But if all the companies are growing, then people will actually move from range. So to be more explicit, if you take the turnover criteria, let's say that the first bracket is between 0 and 5 million euros of business. The next range will be between 5 million and usually 50 million. So it's like a logarithmic approach. And then the next step will be between 50 and maybe 200 million euros, etc. So people, as the company will grow, can naturally get out of the range, and therefore their position will gain some weight. But to compensate that, the actual companies that provide the systems will also update their ranges, because they consider that all the companies are overall growing. So you would probably need your business to grow more than the average growth of the business to be able to add some weight to your position simply by growing the business. That's what we mean. So I don't know if it makes sense. It gets maybe a bit technical at this stage.
No. And I think I see a lot of people are taking notes, so I'm just going to make a sum up. So the first part of how we approached this was to talk about HR objectives. The objectives from the HR department point of view. Remember, I have to find talent. I have to maintain the mass. I cannot lose my talents, and I have to maintain the good relationships at the office. And then the chapter 2 of our approach in today's masterclass with Irwin was about the position. The positions related concepts, okay? Sizing, impact, management, scope, communication. Chapter 1, chapter 2, about all of these criteria, about the position. The question is, we were talking a little bit, I would say, about the market, the external markets. Are there any other criteria than the one that we've listed that could apply to the evaluation of that position from an HR perspective?
I don't think there are more criteria, actually. Maybe just to do the link between the position system and the salary mass, because that's what it responds to. The objective is to make sure that your organization is actually clearly identified by a list of positions. Each position have a linked salary. We'll see that later. And so this is how they link to salary mass, because basically if you move the size of the chairs, obviously it will impact your salary mass at some point. So maybe the second chapter, the third chapter, sorry.
The third one.
No, we haven't finished yet.
Ah.
So we've seen one aspect of things, which is the position. As you've seen, it's more a very mathematical approach. either formal, if it's a system explicitly used in the company, or internal in the way HR will actually weight the positions. And then we get to the employee. And basically the employee, we almost have to take out HR of this equation, because the HR is not spending any time or very few time with employees. They are not able to evaluate what they're doing. So HR get to know employees, either you're, unless you're in a very small company, you get to know employees through your HR processes that you manage about people. And the first process typically is performance management. So we could debate for hours about the performance management, whether it's fair, whether it's, nonetheless, it remains that the performance management is almost exclusively the opinion of your manager. So to be very clear, if there is one person you need to satisfy in your job, it's your manager. So it could be either by responding to any explicit objectives, because people have explicit objectives on a piece of paper, but it's also by doing whatever your manager will want you to do in the limit of what would be ethical, obviously. But that's going to be key, because he's going to fill in this performance management paper. At the end, there will be some sort of rating, formally or informally, and that's what the HR will get in his hands.
Okay, so regarding the employee, the first thing I need to do is to fulfill my manager's vision. That's the number one.
Well, if you want your manager to back you up, because that's something very important to keep in mind, you're not going through a merit increase process without having your manager backing you up. And sometimes you will see that your manager seems to back you up and to agree, but he will ask the HR to say no. So that's also a possibility. No, but managerial courage is not something that is so widely spread. And you have to know that you might not understand why you have the HR refusing something, because sometimes the HR has to be the bad guy and to say no, and the HR is just repeating what the manager is saying.
So you're talking a little bit about managerial courage and other concepts that we touched upon regarding performance management and the courage of your manager. I guess this could be another masterclass.
Probably, yes. But it's just something you need to keep in mind. At some point, when you don't understand things, they just don't make sense. It's probably because someone, it could be your manager, or it could be other internal customers that work very frequently with you. This can have an impact at some point.
And so the first employee-related concept is performance management, and the second one?
It's talent management. So as I mentioned before, one of the objectives of the HR is to prevent talent people to leave the company. And this objective is actually usually done in a very basic way. So there's a talent management process every year. HRs come up with a definition of what is talent. Usually it's the same every year, but sometimes they don't like it the first year, so they try another definition. They put a list of people that are talents. This list is fed based on the feedbacks of the managers, or sometimes a set of managers that have been working with employees. And so employees are tagged, you're a talent or you're not a talent. And therefore the statistic is very simple. You just count the number of talents that left the company, and that's how you actually can get your bonus based on part of your bonus based on. So that's just to understand in a very simple way, the objective of talent management. So clearly, since this is in your bonus, the HRs will not evaluate in the same way, will not respond in the same way for a merit increase if you're in the talent management or if you're not. But again, what is very key, we come down to the person, so we're not linked to the position itself. And in this case, HR's information is based on what the manager is going to tell him. HR can produce a definition of a talent. They can challenge the manager, but at the end, they can only rely on what the manager is saying. So that's another key thing to understand. And some companies do advertise to the employees, whether they're in the talent management or not, others don't. Sometimes you can guess based on you get the special training into a fancy business school. So that's usually a good sign you're in the talent management. So there's some signs indirectly. But that's also a key thing to have in mind. So maybe the question is, how do I get in the talent management list?
I think that's one question. And in a way, so there is some kind of a list. If I understand that there is some kind of a book where people have red stars or black stars, I guess.
I haven't seen black stars per se. I would more say it's I'm not sure it's GDPR compliant, because I'm not sure you actually sign whether you could be in the list of talent pools or not, but that's a separate topic. So to be in the talent management, managers have a hard time to differentiate a talent from performance. So the higher your performance is on the paper and evaluation by your manager, the more likely you will be in the talent management list. It's not a pure definition, and it's just an indication. People have a hard time to differentiate too. And when you come to definitions of a talent, usually you can see the ability to learn fast. No, it's true. You can see this in many HR books. Some companies have a little wide, they're a step a little wiser. I like the idea. They say, if you want to be a talent, you simply need to prove it. And for us, a talent is a person that have moved 3 times of position in the past 4 or 5, they have any time scale. So basically, you can't be a talent because your manager has decided. You're just a talent because you have a track record that complies with the definition of the company, which in a way is very fair. And you don't necessarily need to take a position that is higher. If you take lateral positions, you acquire more competences, and it's a way to recognize as a risk taker and to be a talent manager. So the talent to be in the talent list, sorry. So that's another way of another definition. The inconvenience is that you need to wait a certain number of years to get on the list. So you can't be a talent right away when you arrive. Although I would argue that being a talent in the first 6 months of your job, either you're very good or HRs are very bad, but that's a different topic.
So we have seen a different concept from the beginning of this conference. How does all fit together?
Okay, so that's a little sparkle here. You see, I've done a presentation that didn't need a translation, by the way. So when we talk about positions, and that boils down to a formula we can display at the end, but a position has a weight. A weight is fed by market studies of salaries. So depending on the weight, you will have the typically recommended salary for that position. So each position has a level. This level is equal to a midpoint. We say a midpoint because it's what we would consider as the standard expected salary. And that's from a mathematical perspective. Then we usually say that there is a range around this midpoint where it is acceptable to have people. And the range can be fairly wide. It's between minus 20% of the salary and plus 20%, usually. Companies might have other definitions. So then where the HR will have some decision to make, and based on the manager's feedback, is where do I position people in between this range, obviously. And this is where, if your performance management is good, you would probably be, or very good, you would be probably on top or above the midpoint, and could be above between 0 to 10% above. And if, in addition, you're part of the talent management, we would probably, so either they do it, they anticipate it, and they provide you this increase before you ask for it, if they anticipate, or they will respond more favorably, and they will make sure that you are getting closer to the upper part of the range, which is at 20%. So this raises a question, because when you are getting close to the upper range of 20%, what happens? And we need to link this to also a process of the merit increase, because some companies have a formal yearly merit increase process, and some companies don't, obviously. So, and the purpose here, all I'm saying, can actually work both for a yearly compensation process or for a one-shot request. So basically, as you get higher on the range, there is always your salary increase will tend to reduce, because it's like the 20% is like some sort of limit for the job, and you don't want to overpay for the job. The job has the weight, has a certain salary. If you get out of the range, it means you're overpaying for the value brought by the position. That's what it means. So at this point, and you need to know when you're at this point, because you will not understand why your salary will not increase or very little at this point. So the only solution when you get there, unless you're a great negotiator, is to actually change job and to target a job that has a higher weight, and therefore it will have a higher midpoint. And so when you switch relative to this new salary, you will no longer be 20% above, you will maybe come back to the midpoint of this new job. So another key thing to keep in mind is that internal mobility usually is a key factor to keep growing in terms of salary. And that's independently from any merit or request you could have. So that's so I summarize this sort of formula to explain to you. And I don't know if it's clear, and I forgot to mention, yes, the market scarcity. So if you are a specialist on a key product of the company, there are only 2 competitors in the world having a similar product, your bargain power is going to be huge. If you are just an HR, you can take any HR in the street to do the job, your bargain power is very low. And so that's also something that will influence how you can evolve inside that range.
Yeah, I like that. It's more my universe. And so finally, it's only mathematics. So I can be an HR. Or...
Oh, you probably can. Yes, that's not the question. There's still one key factor that we haven't taken into consideration at this stage, and also to remind you about the intrinsic informal objectives HR could be. HR, like any people, they want also merit increase themselves. They want to be praised. They want to please people. And the key factor that left is what is actually the power of the HR in your company. So I mentioned the manager earlier. The manager, what is his weight, his influence? Because if you don't give the raise to an employee and the employee is leaving, you're pretty sure the manager is not going to be happy. So if the company values the business and the company is doing good, so they don't have any issues to increase people, then it depends on the culture. Will they value fairness? Will they value the mathematical approach? It's an easy way to explain things to people because it's not personal when it's linked to a job. But at the end, if you fail and you didn't evaluate, or the person leaves, you have no one for 6 months, the business is not working anymore, everybody's going to hate HR. So some HRs are here for saving the world. They want to be firm, they want to be fair, and some HRs will just say whatever the manager will want to say. So again, this goes back to square one, where you say the weight of the manager, because that's his opinion that is going to count enormously when it comes to the person, is going to be fairly important. And I didn't mention something else, but you know, the position is very mathematical in the way we weight it. But who provides the data about the position to the HR? The HR is interviewing. Who knows best the position? The manager. So I've never seen, or maybe I didn't realize, that the manager was totally overweighting position by throwing a wrong turnover number of people, or the scope is international, but in fact it's just a super local. So I've not seen it. So, or maybe I just got fooled. I don't know. But same, the manager is weighting, is helping to weight this position. So again, never underestimate the weight of your manager in this process, and because he will probably have the final words in half the company's culture.
Wow. Maybe we can just make a break and thank you, Irwin, for all of this information. Wow, I have a lot of questions because when is now? It's April, it's May, so it's time for a salary increase, guys. I don't know about you and your companies, but it's right about time. So I think you can give your manager a little analysis, including sizing and impact and scope and everything that we've learned today. And to be a bit more fun, Irwin actually had an idea to go through some case studies together. It's not what is it? A bearing point? No, you remember the case study? I forgot everything. But anyways, case study number 1, easy one for you. School level, HR 101. My perimeter has grown, so I was alone, and then they gave me, two people to help me do my job. So I've been working with these guys for about a year. Is this enough for me to go to my manager, give him a 1-slide PowerPoint explaining how I got these 2 great people, and for him to go to HR and ask for a raise? Is that enough?
So I guess more generally, the question is, my scope is increasing. Is it increasing enough to get the salary increase? There are 2 ways to answer that question. Way number 1 is that when you go back, so if we take this case, the management criteria, if we look at very formally, I need to get into details, but to validate this criteria, you need to manage minimum 3 people. Because we don't want organizations to create managers of managers of managers with only 1 or 2 people, basically. That's the underlying reason. So on this specific case, from a purely mathematical standpoint, the position would have the same weight and the same midpoint. Now, it's more on a motivational side that I can bring the question. My employee, well, the employee is actually increasing in scope, so it means that we trust that person. And it means that maybe we want to do something, but it would not be a major gap because the position would not major change and be worth a next level position, basically. That would be my answer as an HR. Maybe we can also add an additional layer in terms of philosophy. I've seen 2 kinds of companies. There's some more Anglo-Saxon companies where when they give you a new job, they say, we trust in you and we increase you right away. And I mean, I don't want to do generic things, but Anglo-Saxon companies tend to think this way. French companies are sometimes more conservative. So they tend to say, we give you the new job, you prove to us that you can actually manage the job, and eventually in a year or 2, you will get the raise. It's really difficult to work against the culture of the company. That's typically something where, because when they've started to do that with some people, they are embarrassed to not do it for others. So they need to keep in the system as the way you're doing it. So just something to know and to understand, because you'll face that context in some companies for sure.
Guys, get ready with your question from the audience. Hopefully one of you has one question. Anyways, we have a lot of questions from our friends online. Hello to Toronto. Hello to Detroit, Michigan. Hello to our friends in London. Hello to our friends in Milan. Wow, it's good, Mark, to see the alumni network so active. Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Be active in the network. This is very important. And we have one question that actually got our attention. How do you manage diversity or diversity? I don't know how to say, male, female, race, everything else in terms of talent management. Does this diversity factor, in 2022, with everything we hear, do we take this into account now?
So I would answer from a non-US perspective. And I guess the answer is different from a US perspective and probably other countries. I don't know 100% of the countries, obviously. The primary reason why HR organize a merit increase in a yearly process is to deal and tackle that kind of topic. Because if you decide who you increase based on who asks here and there during the year, you don't have any overall vision of what you're doing, and you can't be consistent because you don't know all the cases you need to deal with. So the way HR deals in companies that are ethical, that I've known, fortunately, is that when you do the annual increase process, they collect, so the managers basically submit what they would propose as an increase, and they have usually an average budget to do that. And then HR is reviewing all those proposals, and among the axis of reviews, they actually compare the average increase for male versus female. Outside of France or Europe, they might consider other parameters, but since we can't actually host this information on diversity itself, except for male and female, we don't deal in this in France typically. So this is a typical process where we analyze the average merit increase, the average salary. There is even some indicators that we need to show as a company for RSC, and fairness between men and women is one of the criteria. So I guess on this topic, HRs are usually proactive. And this is probably one of the topics where the legislation is helping, obviously.
We have a question from an alumni, EMLYON alumni, Benedict. I'm sure you're listening because I see your question here. So Benedict Lequang at morningstar.com. So I think that she's working for a media company. That's nice. She asks the following question. What about a company's culture that uses bonus more than base compensation to reward good performance?
So as a generic statement, HRs would tend to think that when we talk about performance, it's more tied to bonus. Or if the situation is temporary, that's the case. Maybe we talked when we prepared a little bit this class. If you, typically there's a colleague that is on sick leave for several months, and you have to take on his job. The answer is, will I get a salary increase? And the answer is no, because it's a temporary situation. So you will solve it. The answer of most HRs would be that a temporary situation will be solved with a temporary merit being bonus. So typically, when you talk about performance is what you did during the year. It's linked to bonus. If you perform on your job, or if you master a job, or if you take a new job, then weight of the job equals a midpoint equals a merit increase, because you will be taking this job for a certain amount of time. So that's usually the logic. So if the question is, how do I change the culture of my company to switch it from bonus to merit increase? That's going to be complicated. I'm not sure we can tackle this topic right now. It's also something common in more Anglo-Saxon companies, obviously. And also, if your business can fluctuate strongly from one year to another, you would tend to not put too much salary mass, because salary mass, once you have it, it's more difficult to reduce it, or it implies some complications. So when you're in this scenario, clearly you would try to promote more bonuses than increase.
Do we have a question from the audience? Oh my God. Not sure we have time. I'm sure we have time. Okay, we have time. We have time. So who? 1, 2, 3. Ladies first. Yes. Yes, ladies first. Of course. Of course. We already answered about men and women.
Thank you, Irwin, for telling us the perspective of the other side of the table. I would like to know about, it's just like a follow-up question to how you were explaining about diversity. So when the HR is maintaining a talent pool, is it necessary for the HR to maintain diversity in that as well? Like, because there are certain cultures which in which people tend to do more hard work when it comes to in the organization. So does the HR have an obligation to maintain diversity in the talent pool as well?
So it's a very company dependent question. For the company I've served for almost 10 years, clearly the talent pool had to be 50-50 in terms of men and women. And I'm sorry, for diversity in France, we don't go beyond men-women diversity. So I don't know to what extent your question is to diversity from a culture, religion, or other things. So we don't deal with this in France for legal reasons. So and the underlying reason is that companies are getting more and more challenged to have women at the highest levels of the company. So if you have no one in the talent pool, then who are you going to promote at the best positions? Well, what you have in talent pool being men if you haven't done that 50-50 thing. So so clearly it's in the same logic. Now, to what extent all companies do that and promote that, I don't know. I can only answer from the companies that I've seen.
We have another question from this side of the room.
I have a kind of a difficult question. Yes. So you mentioned about the levels, like you have different levels in a company, and the higher your responsibilities would be, or the higher your level would be, and it would be eventually linked to your salary and bonus. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it happens, I'm talking about my personal experience, like some people would take on some jobs, or like they will move somewhere, or they will manage some people, but then after some years they will realize that they don't want to do it, so they will kind of retrograde in the company, in internal mobility. And so you cannot decrease the salary, I know that, and you cannot fire someone in France. I also know that. But what about the level? Because do you keep the same level, or how do you assess this situation?
So, in fact, in companies who have a certain level of structure, you have indirectly two levels. You have the position level and you have the employees level. So in theory, those two are linked and they just match. So if the employee is taking a higher position, the logic would be that the employee will actually get this higher level. So the reason why we differentiate those two is, as you mentioned, you can't decrease the salary of an employee. And in the same way, sometimes the level is linked to legal structures we can have in France, but that exist in other countries. And so you can't decrease this level as well. So it means indirectly that an employee, well, the personal level of an employee will always be equal to the highest position he ever got in the company, and it will never decrease. But how will that influence on the salary? It is that when you go, it could be the merit increase process every year. Usually at some point you have a system that will manage this, and managers will enter information in the system. So the system will not use the employee's level as a target midpoint. They will use the positions level. So if you are, let's say, level 2, which is a high level, and you take a position that is lower, which is level 3, your level is still 2, your personal level. The position you take is level 3. So in the system, the midpoint proposed by the system will be the one of a position level 3, and will most likely be lower than your salary, assuming that you were paid at midpoint of the upper salary. So the consequence of that is that your salary will appear as being 10%, 15%, 20% above the midpoint of the salary of the position you are actually on. And therefore, the system will probably recommend the manager to do not increase or provide a very little increase. So usually that's an explanation. If you want to take a lower position, the impact will probably that your salary will not increase, or very few for next years. And at some point, the idea is that if you don't increase the salary, since inflation and growth can actually make all the midpoints of all the salaries grow little by little, at some point, the midpoints will capture will be equal to the salary of the employee, and then you can have some increase.
Wow, thanks a lot. And guys, one question before last, because they already opened the wine bottles. The last question will be on the front row, of course. And they already opened the Bourgogne and Côte du Rhône and everything. I know my friend Benoit came here especially for that. So voilà. But we have someone very special from China, from Shanghai, a graduate from EMLYON Business School, one of our best, Kun, and has a few words to say for Irwin.
And actually, I want to say thank you to our partner, Merieux, because actually back to 2016, when my French was not that good, and my first internship in France is given by you. And I was working for you in your supply chain department as an intern. And actually, that is my first experience with supply chain. And when I graduated, I've been working in France in Groupe SAB for the supply chain department ever after. So it is with Merieux that I started my career in supply chain, basically. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. And for my question today, and it is about a question of trade-off and balance, because I know having a job where you got financially appreciated enough, and and this job is corresponding to your career path, this is going to be the dream, and you feel happy. But that's not always the reality. Sometimes we find something that we truly love, but you are not appreciated enough from the financial perspective. But sometimes you are paid enough, but you are not really enjoying your daily work. So, and especially for our youngsters, right? Okay, I'm not that young, but yes, I'm a little bit 28, 29 with 4 years experience. And I would like to say for us, do you have any suggestions? And when we have opportunities, how we make the trade-off, and when it's the right moment to make this trade-off and to abandon what you have and to go for a bigger dreams, or you just stay with what you have, and then continue to grow. Yeah, that's my question.
So clearly, there is not necessarily a link between growing personally in competence in terms of fulfillment and your salary. You can combine both sometimes, and sometimes you don't. So I guess the question number one is, how much do you value your career? And is it what is most important in your life or not? So it's a very personal, dependent question. And this question can evolve over time. So when you start, you got a new job, you're all excited, and also your priorities can change over time. You get children, you want to spend time, or you have children and you don't want to see them, depending on the situation. So when should we change? It's only a matter of your personal objectives. Your personal objective is to have work-life balance. You can obtain it with a job that you master. You want career, clearly. Career will be through internal moves, will be through risk-taking, will be through being able to relocate to any place where you have the job you want. So I don't believe that it's possible to actually do everything, have a 35-hour job, really fulfilling, thrilling, having your children. At some point, you need to compromise and to really know what's important for you. So I don't know if that's really quite an answer that will satisfy you. It's very generic. Sorry for that.
And the last question remains to an executive MBA participant, whom we have the pleasure to welcome.
Thank you. So you point out very clearly that the role of the manager in the way they will evaluate the performance is key for salary increase. I've been a manager, and I felt very lonely when I had to evaluate the various teams I had the responsibility with. Isn't it a role of the HR to define some objective criteria to help managers to make a fair evaluation? On my side, I decided to put as evaluation criteria the fact that people would be above the average as a team player, for instance, or that people would be above the average in terms of workload they take and they carry. And because I would say that's very easy for the HR people to say, that's up to the manager. But in the end, what you need, it's also to have a balanced situations among teams. And putting criteria and objective criteria will certainly help to have fair evaluation.
So the performance management is a topic on its own. Don't get mistaken. HR usually provides a framework that is common between managers. So they say, maybe the culture of the company, we need to emphasize more collectivity. So maybe we should have one objective that is at least collective. It is the team objective and everybody will get the same evaluation in this part. Maybe it should be 20%, maybe it's 50%. So that's one of the things that can be pushed by HR. Maybe they will say that you value some clearly defined objectives that are SMART, so they need to be specific, measurable, etc. So you've all heard that many times. Maybe they can say that it's the behavior that we want to emphasize. So it's still generic, so they can influence on what we evaluate, the proportion. But at the end, if we say we need to define an objective, and the objective is we need to finish the project before X amount of time and X amount of budget, the HR has no idea of what the project is about, what are the criteria, etc. So that's why I say at the end, and even sometimes we define something in the objectives, and then real life happens, and what we defined was totally unachievable just by nature because we had no idea that it was. We've never done a project before of that magnitude. So there are all sorts of surprises, and at the end, the manager will say, "Well, you did a good job," versus what was humanly doable. So that was more my point, is that HR provides usually provide a framework, and then the manager still is the one that decides. The only way to counterbalance that is for me to provide more, that the manager would have a role to collect feedback from other people interacting. That's a way to put more balance. It's just a one person's opinion, but usually manager likes to have this power to decide. So he doesn't necessarily want to ask other people what they think, because if they don't agree, they will just do what they want at the end. So the evaluation question is really tough for managers. If you ever define a really measurable objective, unless you're in sales, it's really tough. So, but we can do a topic on performance management next time if you want.
That'll be the topic of our next Tech the League series. And if I may, we worked with Irwin for about a year on the topic, how to improve the performance management process at Merieux to raise the level of innovation. Wow. And they got us, Irwin gave us this question, and then he said, okay, well, I'll see you in a year. Actually, we did quite some good work in the end, and I'm very proud of what we achieved. But anyways, it's over. This thing does not work anymore. It has no more battery. Ah, mince. Wait. And thank you, Irwin.